Hello, and thanks for joining us for this WTTW News special, The State of Our City. I'm Brandis Friedman. For the next 90 minutes, we'll explore a wide variety of issues important to the future of Chicago and its residents. We're bringing you this program in partnership with the organization My Block, My Hood, My City. That's a South and West Side nonprofit focused on youth initiatives as well as community-based programs. We have a studio audience, and we will hear from them, as well as from those of you we've spoken with in the community in the past week, as well as those who've been in touch via social media. This program, as always, is streaming on our website, as well as Facebook and YouTube. The first half hour is being broadcast on WTTW, and then we continue exclusively online, as we said, streaming on our website, WTTW.com, Facebook, and YouTube. Okay, so we have a panel of guests, and we will meet them tonight as we go. And we're going to start with Mayor Brandon Johnson. Mayor, thank you for being here. Welcome back.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, everybody. So what would you say is the one thing that keeps you up more than anything else at night?
Oh, wow. I have a 10-year-old daughter that is getting grown every single day. Look, one of the challenges that I face as mayor of the city of Chicago is that too many people are not fully aware of what is available to them, whether it's opportunities for young people, opportunities for developers, opportunities for individuals who are seeking housing. But I think the one thing that does keep me up is public safety. Every single morning I wake up to a report of what happened the night before. Ensuring that our communities are safe and secure and fully invested in is something that stays top of mind for me all the time.
We'll definitely be talking about public safety tonight as well. I want to move on to our next guest, who is LaKenya Sharpe, principal of Collins Academy High School. Principal, thank you for joining us, and welcome to Chicago tonight.
Thank you.
What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you've been able to overcome at Collins Academy that you think other schools can replicate and learn from?
Oh, that's great. I think the biggest challenge that we've been able to overcome is a sense of just belonging and belonging to the community. Before I became principal at Collins had 10 principals in 6 years, so the amount of turnover that they were used to. After every break, the kids would literally come to my office like, oh, you're back, you're staying. And I think that being able to give them consistency has allowed us to have the growth and the success that we have been able to maintain. So just being able to really prove that you have someone in your corner and the consistency of that leader has been able to be all the difference.
That stability is very important in schools. Our next guest is one of your students, actually, Damarion Spann. He's a junior at Collins Academy High School. Damarion, thanks for joining us. What do you think people your age in your community are most concerned about on a day-to-day basis?
Thanks for having me, and thank you for that question also. The number one thing is safety. As a youth, I said this before, that we want to feel safe in every aspect of our life, mentally, physically, and emotionally. We want to feel safe walking to school, walking to the corner store, stopping at the gas station, and feeling safe. Safety sets the foundation for students to thrive. It allows us to thrive. And what Principal Sharpe did at the Collins Academy is set that safe foundation so we can thrive and we can focus on our books. We can focus on pursuing our dreams. So once you create those safe environments, the only way is up for students. You will not peak. You only can go up. So that is our number one concern, safety.
Not to forget, it is the Collins Academy, everybody. Thank you, Damarion. Our next panelist is Teresa Córdova, the director of the Great Cities Institute at the University of Illinois Chicago and a professor of urban planning and policy. Thank you for joining us, Teresa. How do you think the city is doing in terms of equitable distribution of resources?
Well, I think we have made a lot of progress on that. And of course, to me, the first thing I think about when I think about equitable anything is equitable access to jobs. And so I think it's important that our economy is expanding, that we're making investments in employment opportunities. We'd like to see more done with an industrial policy for industrial retention and expansion there, and get some of our young people directed into opportunities for employment. And I think the more that we are training people also for the future employment opportunities, I think the better off we're going to be coming down the pike as well.
Okay, thank you. Our next guest is Andrew Papachristos, a professor of sociology at Northwestern University and faculty fellow at the Institute for Policy Research and faculty director of Corners, the Center for Neighborhood Engaged Research and Science. Andrew, good to see you. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
So how would you say violent crime in Chicago has been trending since the pandemic up to now?
Well, this year we're at our lowest point since the pandemic, and if we look at the 3-year kind of averages, we're down about 15% on a 3-year average, which is all headed in the right direction. So.
Okay, and CPD, they release their numbers regularly. Is that the same kind of data that you use in your research, or?
Well, our team at Corners looks at that kind of data, but actually we partner with local organizations that are doing the work every day. And I think one of the keys to the recipe, the things that keep me up at night, are what work is happening on the ground. And Chicago's actually built this civilian architecture around public safety these last 8 years, and we're at a crossroads right now to make that thrive and survive and to keep the city getting safer and safer.
Okay, thank you. We'll have more of that conversation, obviously, as we go on. And last but not least, of course, is Jahmal Cole, founder and CEO of My Block, My Hood, My City. Jahmal, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So, of course, you facilitate community involvement in your daily work. How do you convince people who may not directly experience some of the issues that we're going to be talking about tonight? How do you convince them that they have a stake in what's happening in other parts of the city as well?
Well, that's a great question. I think I was inspired by Dr. King and his message for interconnectivity. So if something happens to you in Pilsen, that should matter to me if I live in Chatham. If something happens in Chatham, that should matter to you if you live in Pilsen. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and Chicago is only as strong as its most under-resourced community. So that's always top of mind. They say we're a segregated city. I want us to be more interconnected.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks to all of our panelists. We've got a lot of questions from our audience members, as I mentioned earlier, as well as some more that have been submitted by community members on social media. So I want to start with something that all of you have mentioned tonight, and that is, of course, public safety. First, we're going to go to Nick Blumberg. He has a question with one of our audience members.
That's right, Brandis. We are here with Patricia Carrillo from West Humboldt Park. Thanks for joining us. What would you like to ask?
Yes. Hey, Mayor. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. My question is, I'm for West Humboldt Park. How is the New Year plan to reduce violence going to be different from the previously, or it's going to change, or it's going to be different?
That's a great question. Has been articulated. We've seen, a nice trend that violence is going down, and so we're headed in the right direction. Here's what we have to do. First of all, we have to ensure that we approach this holistically. One of the things that we have done at the end of last year, at the beginning of this year, we've expanded our care program. This is our operation that responds to mental health crises. 40% of the 911 calls that come through are mental health crises. So now we have a brand new operation where when mental health crises occur, police officers do not respond, but behavioral and mental health professionals respond. And here's why that's important. One, it ensures that there's an actual trained professional to show up to respond to the crises, but it also allows for police officers to be available for the other areas of violence that we do need a response to as well. We've expanded our detectives division, so we are solving more crimes now, which I see as a deterrent. The last thing that I'll say is, look, it's not one solution, it's and all. Right? It's a full force of government. That means we have to fully fund our public schools. We have to ensure that we expand behavior and mental health. This year, we're going to hire 29,000 young people for summer jobs. If you look at what Brandon Scott did in Baltimore, very similar investment, more youth employment, particularly from the neighborhoods where violence is most pervasive, you see a precipitous decline in violence. So it's the full force of government responding to mental behavior health, creating opportunities for jobs, and then of course building more affordable homes to create the type of economic stability that our communities deserve.
And Andrew Papachristos, I want to get you in on this, and you as well, Teresa, Córdova. What do we know about what works to reduce violence?
Well, I think the Mayor mentioned, one of the key things is we can't pit the short-term responses against the long-term investments, and those things have to work together and in concert. So, I think Chicago's in the park trying to do some of that at the same time. In addition to trying to, as you mentioned, Mayor, solving cases, getting things done, actually the investing in these sort of community level interventions of all sorts, the care response teams, the hospital response, the trauma response, the outreach. And one of the things that's also changing is Chicago is starting to scale its community violence intervention efforts that no other city in the country is trying to do with both public and private dollars. And I think that's going to have an impact in the short term and hopefully the long term because they're going to be coordinated with these other sorts of investments and improvements.
Teresa?
People might remember that a few years back we did some studies looking at youth joblessness. And one of the things that we showed is how high the rates are, particularly among young African American men between the ages of 20 and 25. And at that point it was almost 46, 47%, right, of young people out of school and out of work. And at the same time we made some connection between that and the rates of violence. So we recommended back then that there needed to be more investment in neighborhoods, in these sort of youth programs, things like summer jobs and so on. And so what we've actually seen is a decline in youth joblessness. We've seen those numbers improve by about 10 percentage points over the last few years. Now we can't say for certainty that it was all this, but I think there's probably some we can speculate, I think, with some confidence that the kinds of investments that have been made in job programs for young people are paying off, as well as investments being made in neighborhoods themselves to rebuild neighborhoods and the economic activity in those neighborhoods.
All right, so I think sticking with this topic for a little bit longer, we've got another question from an audience member. Joanna Hernandez is in the audience with that person.
Well, thanks, Brenda. We have here Melanie Hogan from Inglewood. What's your question?
Hi, I'm also the founder of Shy Love here in Chicago, and I would like to ask you, what are the repercussions for parents who are enabling their children's criminal behavior?
Yeah, that's a toughie. Mayor, if you want, but I would also love to hear from the folks who are sitting next to you who work with young people and a young person himself.
Yeah, no, look, I think our principal is well positioned to talk about this. Look, I was a public school teacher, and I can tell you this for sure. I have never met a parent that did not want what was best for their child. So let's just level set there. Are there parents that are suffering from trauma and in some instances, are not accountable? Of course, right? But I think what we also have to recognize is that in order for us to ensure that a parent can be their best, we have to ensure that they have opportunities. So for instance, my students, oh my goodness, are now 30 years old, right? But my students also experienced their public housing being destroyed, the lack of opportunities of education within their communities. And so that's why what I've focused in on is building more affordable homes, expanding career opportunities at our community colleges, and then of course making sure that the people of Chicago know that there are opportunities available for them. That question was asked, what keeps me up at night? People not knowing what's available to them can be very debilitating. But I will defer to our resident expert of someone who has dealt with parents who probably always don't come in the building smiling and saying, welcome to the Collins Academy.
Okay, the V part. Yes, I think that to Mayor Johnson's point, it is so imperative that you have those open lines of communications with parents, but also setting expectations for what is expected once they enter into the building. We don't have parents all the time who are coming up just so happy about everything that has been done, but it is important not to be dismissive of their concerns, because parents, when they come to the building, they're concerned about their babies being happy, their babies having opportunities, and that's as a parent, and that's a parent of a student that attends my school. I understand that, and so it's about having these conversations, but also being very staunch in what I do expect and require at the school. And so we really lean into the student code of conduct and for the parent code of conduct. And I believe that once parents are aware and keenly aware of how those expectations are enforced in the school, we really are able to diminish how many parents come up upset. But we don't know why they're always coming into the building. So they might have had a rough night. They might have had a rough day. You have to be able to have these candid and open conversations with parents and not turn them away as if they don't have an interest in their student, because they do. And when that interest is heard, the parent feels better.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I want to keep it moving because our team also went out into the city to find out what some residents' main concerns are. Let's hear from a Southwest Sider.
The businesses that have been experiencing robberies, the street vendors, the shootings also that just happened in broad daylight sometimes, the gang activity, like that's all. Businesses notice how that deters clients from feeling safe to come here. So it's something that really affects them.
All right. So it sounds like, problems with businesses being affected by crime in the area. Mayor, what is your reaction to a concern like that?
Well, look, these are real challenges, right? As much as we can appreciate that shootings and homicides and vehicular carjackings, criminal sexual assault, violent crime continues to go down, there's still a lot more work to be done. Over the course of these first 20 months, we've attracted $20 billion of new investments. We are still the top corporate locator anywhere else in the country, right here in the city of Chicago. So there's clear attraction to do business in Chicago. Here's the approach, and this is what's been discussed, and I'm grateful that our brother Cole has been a part of this effort too. We have to provide more presence in our communities, right? And one of the ways in which I know that my block, my hood, my city continues to do that is to bring people from other neighborhoods into these neighborhoods so that people can see the vibrancy. One of the things that I believe that our main approach has been over the course of these first 20 months is that with our $1.25 billion bond investment, that whole investment is the largest investment in the history of Chicago to not just build more affordable homes, but to expand businesses, right? And so there are opportunities for us to continue to grow business, but one of the ways in which, of course, we keep these business in these communities safe is that we have to have more traffic and more flow coming in these spaces, because that becomes a deterrent in and of itself.
Brother Cole?
Yeah. Piggyback on what the mayor said.
Pass it to him like that?
I saw you. It's okay. We all caught that.
No, I feel like so we have an Explorers program, after school Explorers program, where we take teenagers on educational field trips. We call them explorations. A lot of kids in Chicago have never been downtown. They've never waved for a taxi. They've never been on an elevator, right? They see Lake Michigan and they say, what ocean is that, right? And so we believe if you show kids better, they'll do better, and we believe exposure is key. So if there's 15 currency exchanges in the neighborhood and there's no banks, if you ask a kid, what's a job at a bank, they don't know because they've never been. Or if kids want to be chefs, we take them to restaurants downtown. But it's the same thing. When we take kids to businesses, they get exposure, but the business owners get exposure as well, because they might be thinking these kids coming from North Lawndale, the kids coming from Chatham, the kids coming from South Shore, they might be thinking, what are we about to get? But they don't see these kids, they're full of hope, they're full of aspirations, and if we show them better, they can do better. So it's a push and a pull. I think kids need exposure, but I also think the businesses need exposure so they can see the aspirations that these kids have in these communities.
A question from social media. This one's from Instagram. I'm a big fan of this Instagram handle. Hood Granny asks, it's a legit question though, since removing ShotSpotter technology, what specific resources have you allocated to communities most heavily impacted by gun violence? I would give you a break, Mayor, but I have to give you this question.
Well, first of all, let me just say that, again, this is my top priorities, community safety. I'm raising my family in Austin on the west side of Chicago, the best side. Look, I have a 10, 12, 17-year-old, right? This is what my wife and I, we think about every single day. What has to be highlighted is that the 2 police districts that are attached to Austin, let's just start with the 15th police district, we've seen a decline in every single major category in terms of violence. Austin was also the top neighborhood that hired young people. The Austin community, we hired roughly 1,700 young people from that community. Now, I know we don't want to necessarily give it absolute credit, but I will. I believe there's a direct correlation between the violence going down in Austin and the fact that we had almost 1,700 people hired. Technology in and of itself doesn't stop crime. It doesn't. It just alerts you. So what good is that in and of itself if the ultimate goal is to prevent violence? It was also expressed, we put $100 million in our CVI program. So people on the ground, community violence interventionists, these are individuals on the ground who will understand and understand the community and are tethered to the community. And so these are the investments that we will continue to make to build a better, stronger, and a much safer Chicago.
Of course, ShotSpotter, when it was in existence, was controversial, and then when Mayor, under your administration, the city chose to close that contract, it was still controversial. Andrew Papachristos, I'm going to come to you. What do we know about the efficacy of that kind of technology and how it works?
Well, I think the mayor alluded to the key point is it's not correlated with reductions in violence. It will get people there faster. It could get evidence a little bit quicker. It's not really decisive in terms of the science of it. So essentially the question is one of the voters and one that the mayor had to deal with. But if there's no proof that technology, it's how you use it essentially. And there are other technologies that are in the city that are not being used that we could use in different ways. So I think it's fair to ask those questions.
Jahmal?
Yeah, I think there's more technology on the light poles than in the classrooms. I feel like there's so much shot spotter technology, and kids don't even got no laptops or no hotspots at home. And so I think that everything we do in my block, my hood, my city is violence prevention work. When you invest in children, that's violence prevention. When you show them better, they can do better. The work we do with our block clubs, I mean, I've never run to a block club and said, thank God for this shot spotter technology. No, they say the more connected we are in our block, the safer we are, the healthier we are, and the happier we are. The girls getting off school at 3 o'clock, let's make sure we open up the window and make sure we're looking out for them. Like, if you see something, say something. It sounds old school, but it really does work.
Okay, so we've got another audience question on this topic before we move on. I'm going to go to Nick Blumberg in the audience.
That's right, Brandis. This comes from Gail Salisbury, who wasn't able to join us tonight, but Gail wanted to ask, when a shooting occurs on the north side, bars and problem businesses are closed. The police commander has stats that the crime in Gail's area is down 86% since Happy Liquor was closed. Why can't we get more businesses that cause problems to close?
Okay. Mayor.
Yeah, I always just feel like when a question is asked, I just wait for the other person to raise their hand.
They're not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think that there are clear examples, again, of how we're all coming together collectively to respond to violence. But I just want to lift up and highlight what was in this question. Shootings, access to guns, illegal guns. You have a president that's spending more time talking about undocumented families than he is talking about the illegal guns that are flowing through the streets of Chicago. That's what our focus has to be on. Now, as far as our division who handles this, BACP, Business Affairs, we have an acting commissioner. We're happy to have that conversation about how we can provide something more universal that holds these businesses accountable. But the real danger, I really believe, is the fact that we have these illegal guns to continue to come through our city, and we have to have a real response from the federal government to actually help us do something about it.
Okay, so I want to pivot the discussion to education, Chicago Public Schools. Joanna is in the audience with a question from an audience member.
Yeah, Brandis, we have here Antonio Daniels here. He's from the west side, from the Austin neighborhood. There's a lot of west side love on this side, I have to say that. West side. What is your question?
Yes, my question is, what are the strategies that are being implemented to ensure equitable access to quality education and resources for all students across Chicago neighborhoods?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm presuming that one's for me as well. But I do want to lift up that we have a student here that I believe who can speak to the work that's happening in North Lawndale, because what doesn't get discussed often is how we've invested $45 million within the North Lawndale community of the schools that will feed into the Collins Academy, right? So part of the effort and the strategy is to ensure that our neighborhood schools are made whole. Now, I know this seems controversial and it really shouldn't be. I am grateful, let me just make sure I'm absolutely clear. I am grateful that there are people at the state level that understand that we have to invest in our public education system. And we have done more investment than we have done in a long time. And it is still not enough. And if anyone takes offense to a mayor advocating for more resources to a school district that is 87% black and brown, working people, poor people, then I think they should take a deeper look inside to what their ultimate desire is in their particular elected position. And so the strategy has to be, quite frankly, in this room, that we challenge our state reps and our state senators, as well as our governor, to ensure that we get more revenue to invest more in our public schools. Public education at the expense of the state, after all, is a Negro idea. Those are the words of W.E.B. Du Bois. And we have a clear example of a principal and a student that recognize that these investments, it's a matter of life and living life more purposefully. And so coming up short for the people of Chicago, we're not going to accept that. We're going to continue to organize to ensure that the people of Chicago get their just due.
All right, thank you. Well, actually, here's what I want to do, Mayor. Thank you. I want to get to one more audience question, because I do want to involve the other two folks who are sitting next to you. Nick Blumberg is in the audience with this next question.
Brandis, I'm here with Brianna Matthews, who joins us from the South Side.
Good evening. I am a school social worker on the South Side of Chicago. So my question is, thank you. How are teachers expected to attend to the needs of all of their students when they have children with special needs, children who speak different languages, and potentially gifted kids all in the same class?
Yeah,
Thank you. And actually, Mayor, thank you, because I know you've got the education background as well. I want to get Principal Sharpe on this one if we can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We've got about 30 seconds before, but then obviously there'll be more time to answer this question. Principal, go ahead.
Yes, it's definitely daunting. We don't want to make it seem like it's not, but a lot of the resources that are being added into the classrooms, into the schools, are coming from the district, where they are attempting to hire teachers who are translators. They are attempting to provide these resources that allow students of all backgrounds to be able to be successful.
That's a very good place to stop, but I do want to come back and let you finish that answer in just a second, because as we mentioned at the top of the program, we are continuing this conversation online. So if you're already streaming online, awesome, stay right there. If you're watching on television, though, you can keep watching this program by streaming on WTTW.com, Facebook, and YouTube. Again, we're not done, y'all. Join us for the next hour online at WTTW.com, Facebook, and YouTube for more with the mayor, our panel, and our audience. It all continues online in just a moment, so we'll see you there.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jin and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Thank you for joining us online. We now continue our town hall discussion, the state of our city, in partnership with the organization My Block, My Hood, My City. Before we go on to the next topic, I did want to come back to Principal Sharpe and give you an opportunity to complete your thoughts on that last question with regards to teachers being expected to juggle a lot in the classroom. If you've got children who speak different languages, as well as those who might be gifted, or children who have special needs. That's a lot.
It is a lot, and as I was saying, also, we have a group of talented educators who have also been taught strategies as differentiation, but being able to have additional resources added to the building, such as instructional leaders, such as our diverse learning educators, and a lot of training has also been added to the record book. And so teachers are able to utilize these resources to continue to provide these educational opportunities. Not to say that it's going to be enough, as the mayor has already alluded to. We can always continue to have those resources added, but there are resources being made available in the classroom each and every day.
Damarion, didn't forget about you. What is it like for you in the classroom?
So Collins is a really small community. We is the fastest growing high school on the west side of Chicago, though, but it's very intentional at Collins. So you have teachers who know your name. You're just not a number. Your teachers can tell you your growth right after your Start 360 test. So it's just about being intentional and letting the student know, I care for you. I'm not here for a salary. I'm not here just to do it, but I care for you. And we get that a lot at Collins. And coming from a larger school, because I did come from Kenwood Academy in Hyde Park, I was an academic center kid, but I benefit more from being around students who relate to me more, because we all see, at Kenwood, it was 4,000 kids. I'm in class with seniors, juniors, and the teacher tend to have to teach grade levels that's nearly 5 years apart. But at Collins, you just get that environment where you can thrive because your teacher you can go to your principal and make a complaint, or you can say, I'm not getting this, and your principal will address the issue.
So Collins has been the school for you, it sounds like. I want to move on to another topic, immigration, and let's start with a video question for the mayor.
Why did he support the immigrants more than his own people who from Chicago that voted for him to get into office? That's my question to the mayor.
I feel like us as citizens, like we should be getting help, you know. The mayor hasn't really been doing anything for the community, for the people.
Mayor Johnson?
Yeah, look, I think it's important that we appreciate the status of the city of Chicago as a welcoming city. And this is something that is deeply tethered to our to our story, a black Haitian immigrant who fell in love with a Potawatomi woman, who set up a trade post at the bank of the river, understanding that Chicago one day would be the global capital of the world. It was Mayor Harold Washington that declared us to be a sanctuary city when Central and South America were being undermined by the federal government. Now, as far as the investments that we have made for the new arrivals mission, the governor of Texas sent people to Chicago for Chicagoans to feel just the way they're feeling. That's why he did it, was to create division within our communities. Now, Chicago, we rose above that attack. And I stand by the fact that individuals being dropped off to sleep on the floor on police districts, I will never apologize as a humanitarian for making sure that individuals could have a little bit of dignity as they figure out their way of life. Now, the last thing that I will say to this is that there were 30,000 Ukrainians brought to this city as well. I do not ever remember those questions being asked. What is the difference between the 30,000 Ukrainians that are here and the Venezuelans that were sent here? Now, $20 billion of new investment. I'm not going to apologize that we built 4,000 affordable homes, that we have had a 43% increase in youth employment, that again, $20 billion of new investments that's going to create opportunities for the registrants at community colleges in Chicago. As that number continues to go up, the number one subgroup are black young men who will be able to benefit from the $20 billion of investments. We have spent 20 times more on Chicagoans than we have in this new arrivals mission. Let me just say this last part emphatically. It is a propaganda campaign by the extreme right wing in this country that want to divide black, brown, Asian, immigrant communities, descendants of slaves. I am not going to stand for anybody in the White House or any other white-wing extremists who want to divide our communities. We can do both. This city has stood firm as we look to expand reparations opportunity in this city, and we can stand firm to ensure that families who want to make Chicago their home, there's enough room for all of us.
So, of course, this is a conversation that has been ongoing since the arrival of our first asylum seekers. I want to hear now from a member of our live audience with Joanna.
Brandis, we have here Elise Edwards from West Humboldt Park. What is your question?
So my question is, how can we bridge the gap between the black and brown communities in light of the migrant situation? But more importantly, how do you envision using, community voices and organizations in order to help support that strategy of unity?
I am actually going to ask Jahmal Cole to take this one first.
Yeah, Lisa's great question. I think that I know I'm next to a professor, but the communities really are my classrooms. The people are the professors for me, and our final exams are the initiatives we put forth by working together to uplift your voice in your program. So I think that one of the things we're doing is keeping our ear to the streets and rapidly responding. So in Little Village right now, a lot of schools right now say that 40 to 50 kids right now need food, and they also need hotspots, and they also and so we're trying to work with other nonprofits in the area to deliver those things to the schools. So we work with 15 different schools in a lot of different Chicago neighborhoods, and we've been asking them about ICE and asking them, not coming in assuming we know how to help them, but saying, hey, how can we work with the local nonprofits? How can we work with the local institutions and associations to amplify their programs and their voice? And what they're telling us right now they need food, they need hotspots, and we're delivering that to schools right now. So.
Teresa Córdova, same question to you, please.
Well, I think Mayor Johnson's, first of all, everything he said, I thank you very much. And something very, very important about how you started out, which is that it's part of Chicago's story. It's like we can't tell the story of Chicago without telling the story of how important immigrants have been to the building of Chicago, right? We've always been that sort of, that labor pool, the sort of all the resources, all the the cultural aspect, and everything that has made Chicago what it is. We are a history of immigration, in addition to, of course, the history of our foundation, which is the the indigenous folks that were here that preceded us, the Potawatomi and others from the Fire Nations. But so that is who we are here, right? And I think when we talk about a lot of Latinos, for example, is that how important Latinos are, including Mexicans, which are the largest group of Latinos, how important Latinos are to the economy. It's like part of the propaganda that you make reference to is that they're not paying taxes, right? That they're taking from the economy, they're stealing from the economy, when in fact, the contribution to the gross domestic product of not only the city but to the state, the saving of the region through its population increase, we would have lost federal dollars. We would have lost federal representation were it not for the increasing presence of Latinos. The role in the economy in providing the construction workers, in providing landscape folks, restaurant workers, and so on. So we are so integral as business owners, as consumers, and so on. So I think so much of the propaganda has been about making immigrants as scapegoats to explain sort of much larger economic conditions that have been facing us, particularly since the mid-'70s with the decline of the manufacturing and the shifts in our economy. So we look for explanations, and they've been made the scapegoats of that. Ultimately, what we need here is we need to remember that we are one community. And the more we think about building community and coming together and being together, not just as Black and brown, but as Black and brown, as Asians, and the various other ethnicities that make up Chicago. So it's about community, and it's about us coming together. That really has made Chicago great in the past and will make Chicago great in the future.
Thank you. So one more question on that topic with someone that we spoke to out in the community here, that is.
Being here in Pilsen, like a heavily Hispanic resided neighborhood, with all the ICE situations that are going on in the nation, some very extreme cases of people going into schools and places of worship, kind of like how are we going to respond to that, and how are you handling some of the cases that I'm sure have come up?
How are you going to support undocumented immigrants, especially, or more importantly, the ones that are paying taxes and now they're not going to be able to go to work?
Okay, Mayor, I'll come to you first on that one.
Yeah, this is heartbreaking, quite frankly. The President of the United States of America continues to sow seeds of fear and intimidation. In Chicago, we won't be. We're a strong city. 30 degrees outside, we're jogging with our shorts on. We're tough. We can handle this. And I mean that with all sincerity. Look, we reaffirmed our status as a welcoming city. And the complementary law, the Illinois Trust Act, provides support where our police department will not dub as federal agents. Now look, undocumented individuals that have been convicted of a crime will be subject to federal law. That is just a reality. But we're going to continue to ensure that all of our sister agencies, our city departments, stand firm with our welcoming city ordinance. It's something that I'm very proud of. The last thing that I'll say is this. Look, I know that fear has seeped into the hearts of many people. And even with the previous questions of wondering what's going to be there for them. This zero-sum game where we pit neighborhoods against one another is the antithesis to why my block, my hood, my city exists. Bringing people together to understand that our collective struggle, whether it was the Trail of Tears, whether it was the Ma'afa, and whether it's migration, whether it's wars in other regions of the planet, where Jewish immigrants, Italian immigrants, Polish immigrants have come to this city. Our city is the best city in the world because we have literally a taste of the entire globe. One of the most diverse economies in the world. Not one industry takes up more than 14% of our overall GDP. 20% of the world's fresh water is in our front yard with our strongest ally in the region, Canada. And so I'm simply saying that as a city, we have this incredible story, this collection of stories from around the globe that well positions us to be the global capital of the world. And we're going to continue to build a better, stronger, and a safer Chicago and a more inclusive economy by working with everyone.
All right, thank you. So I think we all know Chicago has a history of segregation and division, but there are events that are meant to be a bridge, to bridge that divide between a city of many neighborhoods, as we know. One of the questions that we received, I think, from a resident, Kimberly Green, it's about this very issue. She asks, quote, how can we eliminate the bias/stigma that the North Side has about the South and West Sides? Right? I hear you can't hear it, but I hear the audience behind me. Jahmal Cole, I want to come to you first with that one, and then we'll talk to your fellow panelists.
Yeah, I would say by volunteering. I think that if the city gets overwhelmed by Mother Nature, we're like the Red Cross of the Hood in my block, my hood, my city. So we respond, and we see people of all different colors, genders, religions, opinions, ethnicities, occupations show up to help volunteer because it matters, right? And so if there's a snowstorm, we're able to, if you're an elder in Jefferson Park, we can connect the will to do good with the good that needs to be done rapidly. So we'll connect a volunteer to an elder in Jefferson Park. If there's a heat wave and an elder in Roseland needs an air conditioner or a fan, we're able to connect a volunteer in Roseland to a volunteer to an elder in Roseland that needs the support. So I encourage everybody that we are connected by our values, not by the color of our skin. And if you want to volunteer, go to our website, formyblock.org, and sign up. If you volunteer enough hours, you get a snazzy hoodie, man. So show up and volunteer. That's what I said.
Free hoodie.
Yeah.
Damarion, I want to get you in on that. What do you think, and how do you think we can overcome those biases?
So it's all about seeing for yourself. And I think that is really important. As this summer, I did the youth-led tours with my block, my hood, my city. And what we do is we tour individuals around the community, highlighting the historic buildings, the parks, and the history that is based around the North Lawndale community. I think if you come in the North Lawndale community, you feel a sense of community within itself. So seeing that alone should speak value as you have these black and brown students, us black and brown students who can be doing anything on their Saturday morning, but you choose to come inform others upon your community and what value your community holds to you. And it just allows others to come in and say, that really stood with me, that stuck with me, and it allows them to reflect on what they thought beforehand.
Thank you. So on this subject, we've got another question from the audience. Nick Blumberg has that one.
That's right. We are here with Eunice Chapman-Regis. Thanks for being here tonight. What would you like to ask?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm with Lena Bivens from Our Legacy, which is a consortium of neighborhood block clubs around the country. And my question is, why doesn't the South Side get the same level of safety, considering quality of issues, as the North Side? Adult, not teenagers, adult loiterers are openly selling drugs, trespassing, blocking the sidewalk, disturbing the peace with loud and vulgar arguments. Police say they're only able to write citations.
Okay, thank you for that question. I'm thinking about which of you should have that one.
First of all, thank you for your question, and thank you for just being a long-standing Southsider. Look, there's not a one single answer that can overcome the years of disinvestment. There just isn't. And you know what I've said earlier in our conversation is that we have asked police to do everything. And so everything, and maybe that's a little hyperbolic, but for too many things in the city of Chicago, it's always been what's the police response? And clearly that's insufficient. We have more police per capita than anywhere else in the country. So if it was just number of police officers, we would ostensibly be the safest city in America. And so what you are expressing is something that I've had multiple conversations with our alders about how, you know, we better intervene to ensure that people can actually walk to their front door. Look, I get it. Trust me, I get it. And, you know, my life is a little bit different now because, you know, I have a little extra help to provide some support for me to get in the house. You know, but something that we have been very much focused in on to ensure that we're not just showing up, removing people from corners, but we're actually removing the the crime that leads to the type of loitering that makes it difficult for our communities to feel absolutely safe. And so I'm willing to continue to work with you and community leaders like yourself to devise strategies to ensure that we do not have that type of existence in our communities. It's very frustrating. I've worked with our superintendent that I appointed as we work to do larger scale investigations to remove these individuals, quite frankly, that are terrorizing neighborhoods. There is a recent one just on the west side, working with our federal partners as well to remove many of these drug dealers, quite frankly, that are causing that havoc. And so the specific blocks and neighborhoods that you're talking about, I'm serious, let's talk after this conversation so that we can put more attention in an area that perhaps may have not been exposed enough to our law enforcement and our other agencies that can help provide support for these families.
Andrew Papachristos, haven't forgotten about you. I want to get you in on this as well, and thank you for the answer, Mayor. From the sociologist, researcher, data perspective, what can you add to a question like that?
Well, one thing I add, I think is kind of a lot of the conversations, is we're investing a lot of money, but we're investing in the criminal justice system. So when you look at like the $1 Million Block Project, how much money are we spending on parole and probation and sort of all these sorts of elements which could be used in other different dimensions, from schools to building a community workforce that's dealing on the ground with violence and violence prevention, because you want people to sort of feel safe. So when you think about the peacekeepers, the trauma response, the care team, those are investments in a workforce about a community that they love, and increasing that will have this sort of benefits that we're all kind of talking about, right? Building a workforce, creating safe spaces so people feel safe getting to school, in school, coming home from school, going to the store, making sure there's a store to go to. But we are investing. We have to shift those investments, and I think that is sort of one of the things when we look at the actual numbers and the dollars that are there.
Are you seeing cities, communities that are doing this type of investment that you're referring to where it's having an impact?
So two examples. One, the mayor talked about the $100 million being spent on community violence intervention. That's building a workforce. So we have to make sure that workforce is there. And when we look at the impact of CVI on the neighborhoods they were at in Chicago, our own estimates at Corners, our research center, suggests that there were 383 fewer homicides and shootings during the first 4 years. That's 7 a month, right? That's huge. And this is a workforce that was just getting started, right? And in fact, we would have been worse off during those hard COVID years if not for those investments. So they're starting to pay off. Does it work every time? Of course not. No program works every time. But we have to give these sorts of efforts the chance to grow. We don't shut off the lights on hospitals if a clinical trial fails, right? We keep going. And the same thing needs to happen in the space of public safety as well.
Thank you. So I want to move on to housing. First, we're going to hear from two people who sent us a question via video.
I'm wondering what he thinks about the housing crisis and the housing market in general right now. I kind of feel like we're in a completely different era right now, and I feel like it's a little bit too expensive.
Why is rent so high?
Very simple question there. Why is rent so high? Teresa, I want to come to you with your thoughts, and then we'll get the mayor in as well.
Oh boy.
Why is rent so high?
Why is rent so high? It has so much to do with the fact that housing is based on this so-called free, but market system, right? So when it comes time to trying to develop affordable housing, for example, there really needs to be some forms of subsidies. If you're gonna do it just purely based on the market, it's not going to work. And so we need to be thinking about what does it take to provide housing subsidies. And I think also, this is something I maybe haven't thought about a lot, but it's coming to me now, is that the importance of public housing, for example, and collective housing, cooperative housing, land trusts. All those kinds of things are also ways that we can provide opportunities to get better housing. But unless we're thinking about how we're going to subsidize both the building of affordable housing as well as providing people subsidies for rent. We need to do that in the context of this market-based phenomenon. And then you combine that with high interest rates. And I know one of the things that a lot of communities, particularly Latino communities, are facing is the issue of gentrification, where they're being priced out of neighborhoods because the housing stock is changing. For example, the size of that housing stock, but and then of course when you combine that, Sorry, Mayor, but when you combine that, and I know this is, it's bigger than any one single thing, but the property taxes adds also to the cost of housing. And so when you add all of that together, I think that's what makes it hard. But the extent to which we can start thinking about subsidizing some of the housing development, I think we'll be able to increase our housing stock and access to affordable housing.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, no need to apologize, not at all. Look, the challenge that we have in government in general, we have a very lopsided tax structure. We just do. Some of the wealthiest people in the state of Illinois and the country pay less of their overall income taxes than some of the poorest people. That gap continues to widen. And so we do have to address that. The second thing is we have to build more units, and we have to build more affordable units, and it has to include public housing as well. I told you all, look, I taught in Cabrini Green. My students woke up every single day with a bulldozer staring them in the face as public housing was being dismantled, and we have not replaced those units. So far, we've built more affordable units in these first 20 months, and we're going to continue to build more affordable units. And what does that look like? That's also social green housing, putting hundreds of millions of dollars into a revolving loan so that we can continue to build more units, more affordable units, 1,100 units downtown. 30% of them will be affordable. Nowhere else in the country can you say affordable housing and downtown. So the basic answer to solving and dealing with the housing challenge in Chicago or anywhere else on the planet is we have to build more units. We have to build more affordable units. We have an entire program called the Missing Middle, where we are providing opportunities for developers to move on multiple plots in a particular neighborhood, like Inglewood and North Lawndale, where vacancy is at its greatest. These type of initiatives for individuals to purchase homes, individuals to have their homes repaired, these are all programs that are available in the city of Chicago. As I said earlier, this is a frustration that I have because there are opportunities for these type of investments to actually materialize. It's a matter of making sure that people know and that they are aware.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Housing should be a right. I mean, it should be a fundamental right. As a society, we should be thinking about how do we provide housing? I mean, make sure everybody has access to housing.
Thank you. I want to move on to food insecurity because we can start this question with a member of our audience. Joanna Hernandez has a member with a question.
Yeah, Brandis, we have here is Annette Sanders. Thank you for being here from Chatham. What is your question?
Why are major grocery stores not located in certain parts of the city?
Teresa, Córdova, I want to come back to you on this one. Thoughts?
Again, it's sort of related to the same point about everything sort of so driven by what are the mandates, the imperatives of how the market functions. So if you ask a grocery store owner, they're going to tell you that the market isn't there, and so which I think is, it's a debatable argument probably, but I think this is also where I think as much as we can think about what does it take to build a strong local neighborhood economy, and there's, for example, a lot of neighborhood food markets, farmers markets, growers, gardens, community gardens, and so on. But I think, I think an interesting model could be a cooperative grocery store. There used to be a lot of those in our neighborhoods in the past, right? The corner grocery store. But again, we're up against the sort of economics of the economy of scale. And so things get cheaper when they're subsidized by, whether it's the federal government subsidizing corn, for example, or subsidizing the things that go into the cheaper products. But we can also, if we think about it at a more local level, we can also think about making sure that food is healthier as well.
Thank you. I want to add in one more question about housing as well. This one came to us via Instagram from Brad1006. Thank you for the question. It reads, what is the plan to get the unhoused in public green spaces into suitable temporary or permanent housing? What is the plan?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Brad1006. When we discussed the new arrivals mission earlier, I failed to mention that as a result of that crisis, we built a one system initiative working with the state of Illinois to provide more shelters and beds for individuals who are experiencing the crises of being unhoused. Right now we have 1,200, almost 1,300 beds available for families right now. The 311 call center, we've cleared out every single individual that is unhoused that have called that 311. We've put them in temporary shelter. Very proud, it's the first of its kind. We're going to continue to fight for more resources to ensure that more families have opportunities. I don't know if you all remember, but a cycle or two ago, we had a ballot referendum around Bring Chicago Home. It would have raised $100 million to respond to this demand. We're going to continue to still work to build more homes, but I want to lift up that effort because the interests of the ultra-rich confused as well as baited voters into believing that that revenue would go somewhere other than what we had purposed it for. They used the migrant crisis to undermine the interest of working people. 97% of individuals would have received a tax break on any property that is transferred over. Only 3% of Chicagoans would have been expected to pay incrementally more in order to secure the revenue that's needed to respond to this crisis. Here's what I'm asking the people of Chicago. At the point in which we go for this revenue again, let's not allow the interests of the corporations as well as the ultra-rich to dictate what working people deserve in this city. We have to pass Bring Chicago Home, changing the tax code to address the real estate transfer so that we can actually generate the revenue to respond to these crises. Every issue that we are facing in this city requires investment. It's got to come from somewhere. What I'm offering as mayor of the city of Chicago, it has to come from the ultra rich, and these large corporations, in many cases, do not pay income taxes. Working people in this city have balanced the budget for decades. I'm saying there's a better pathway forward to respond to these crises if we stick together as working people, demanding that the ultra rich in this city, in this state, finally pay their fair share in taxes.
So I want to move on to health and wellness. Mayor, we have another question from a resident that I will read, Pamela Bilal. She's asked, quote, how can we increase the quality/rating of local hospitals?
You know, one of the things about hospitals and just healthcare in general, this is the one thing that as America, we have to do better. We are turning out some of the best, healthcare providers and workers, right? We just expanded opportunities at the West Side campus through Malcolm X to create greater pathways for healthcare. The challenge that we have, again, it goes back to revenue, that the safety net hospitals, the so-called safety net hospitals, were families who are on the Affordable Care Act, where in some instances, 70% of the individuals, for instance, at the Loretto Hospital receive care as a result of the Affordable Care Act. In order for us to ensure that our hospitals have stronger or better grade, we have to ensure that these hospitals actually have the type of funding from federal and state to provide more support and services. So for instance, at the Loretto Hospital, there's an effort to expand dialysis services there because unfortunately, in too many of our communities, diabetes is becoming a greater cause of death and it's shortening the life expectancy. But it really comes down to something as simple as ensuring that we actually have tax code in Chicago, state of Illinois, that doesn't favor the ultra rich. As we continue to see the wealth gap expand between those who have and those who do not have, it's going to become that much more imperative that we actually have balance. Let me just say this last point. The wealth, the average wealth of a white family in the city of Chicago is about $230,000. The average wealth of a black family in the city of Chicago is zero. You have black families waking up every single day as we celebrate Black History Month where they barely break even. It's like the Michael Jackson song on The Wiz. You can't win, child, and you can't even get out the game. People are waking up every single day just trying to break even. The tax code in this state and in this country has always favored the rich. The moment that we stand up as working people and workers across America and actually demand that the oligarch and the ultra-rich will not dictate and determine the type of life that we get to live, we will be a much better society by doing so.
All that said, Mayor, how are you? How's the city? Are we prepared? And some of this is a question for the county as well. We'll do this again with them. But what to do about the loss of federal resources with regards to health care that could be looming?
This is very disturbing. It is. When I think about the panel and the expertise that each of them bring to society and the people who are in the audience, you all look so beautiful and still very much awake. That's impressive. That we have an individual who is working to interrupt the evolution of our democracy and wants to work outside of the constraints of the Constitution. This is dangerous, right? What's clear, though, in this moment, that there are cities that are drawing inspiration from our fight back. Just the other day ago, President Trump declared a policy against one of our strongest allies. And then in less than 48 hours, he is now rethinking that policy. He said he was going to withhold federal dollars, stop people from eating, having access to medicine, having access to education, and then he reconsidered that. Every single day, I'm a baseball guy, the President of the United States continues to balk, which is a illegal, deceptive move that a pitcher can make that they shouldn't do. We have to call him out for his balk. And at some point, we got to get him off that freaking mound. And I said freaking because it's a young live studio audience. Yes. Yes.
All right, so I want to turn our focus to community engagement and Jahmal Cole. I know that's something you know a little bit about. How can the city support grassroots organizations and block clubs in driving long-term change in their communities?
Yeah, I think that one of the things I enjoy about studying community psychology and community development is looking at neighborhoods from an asset-based lens as opposed to a deficit-based lens. Because when you do that, you don't expect the manna to fall from the sky, or you say, ask not what the government can do for you, but what can you do to support the government. So I like the asset-based lens because it puts the individuals, the associations, and the libraries in the community. It makes them the experts. So we're not just waiting for. We're not clients. It's not turning us to a client and expecting us to get resources. It's like, hey, let's get organized together so when we're organized and we actually do get the federal funding, we'll know what to do with it. So as far as what the city government can do to be a partner with nonprofits is make it a little bit easier for folks to get grants. I mean, right now you actually, like nonprofit organizations, we got to hire, somebody and almost give blood to get grant money. I mean, we've been around for a long time and we've never gotten a federal or a state or a city grant. But that's a testament to our the 8,000 individual donors online that support My Block, My Hood, My City and become monthly donors, and that's a testament to you guys. But there's people starting internet cafes in Roseland out of their kitchen. There are people on the west side of Chicago that are doing all they can just to get the light poles in the yards in their block because there's no lights in the alley or lights in the block. So if you want to support the people at the block level, you have to meet them where they're at and just make it easier, take away some of the red tape. That's what I would say. So, yeah.
Thank you, Jahmal. So another question, resident Kimberly Green submitted this one via, I don't remember how, and that's not important, but the question is this: how can we get corporations/institutions to fully commit to underserved neighborhoods, excluding TIF incentives? Okay, so I'm going to do something different here. Damarion, I actually want to come to you on this one first. How do you think, corporations and institutions, how do you think you can get them involved in what's happening in neighborhoods and communities around Chicago?
So I learned from a very wise teacher of mine is that everything should have a why. So if you want to be in our community, why? If you want to sell all of these major things in our community, why and how can you help us? So I remember 2 months ago, I went to Dunkin' Donuts. It's the newest place in the community. And I said, you in our community, can you donate to our school? He said, sure we can. What do you need? I said, we have about 30 juniors, because I care for my class a lot. So I'm like, we have 30 juniors. We take ACT in the spring. We need something to make the students want to come to take the test and have them focus during the test. He said we could do that, and that is what we need, building the community by simply you being in the community and wanting to give back to that community. So that is really the main reason.
Teresa, Córdova.
One other thing that a community can do is it can establish a plan. Because the community that has a plan for itself, when somebody from an external force comes in, they're less likely to run over a community if a community can say, this is a plan that we have in place. So there's been quality of life plans, there's been other kinds of sort of community-based plans, but the extent to which people sit down and they say, this is our vision, this is something we want for ourselves, these are the components we want of that vision, and you have a lot of participation in that, then it gives you more strength to actually be able to implement what you want for your own community as opposed to somebody else deciding for you.
Jahmal.
Yeah, I'm just piggybacking on what everyone's saying. I agree. That's why I'm a community developer. I believe, and that's why we're having a State of Our City town hall to uplift y'all voices in the community. We like, by us knowing each other and continuously building relationships with each other, that's the best thing we can do. Because the hope of federal dollars coming in and fixing everything it ain't gonna happen. I mean, what is gonna happen though is us, if there's 15 houses on this side of the streets and 16 houses on that side of the street, is y'all meeting together once per month to figure out how are we gonna improve the quality of life in our block. When that happens and you get organized, you'll be able to utilize the money a lot better than just being scattered when people come in. So just start more block clubs and be intentional about that. And if you need help starting a block club or a neighborhood program, again, go to our website, formyblock.org. This is what we do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to our audience because I think our next audience member is with Nick and might have a question related to what Jahmal just said.
Well, Brandis, this is from another member of the audience who wasn't available to join us tonight, but I'm going to try not to take it personally. Anitra Taylor wanted to ask, how do we encourage more residents to start participating in block club meetings and other activities?
Jahmal, I'm going to throw that one to you.
Again, I would say I would say that, man,
You've got so many thoughts.
Yeah, I do, because we work with 85 block clubs all over Chicago, and these people are really superheroes, and these people are spending their own paycheck to make sure that their newsletters will be printed. They're spending their own paycheck to make sure that the schools have water when they don't have any air conditioning. They're spending their own money to open their houses up for block club meetings, and so I would say Chicago is very block by block, and you can't always expect somebody to come outside and fix things. The most powerful thing you can do is organize together, because it's not going to be sustainable if somebody else comes in and gentrifies or organizes your community for you. It's not going to last. The best thing you can do is build a relationship with your neighbor, because if your neighbor is helping you prevent the violence, you're going to be there for 10, 20 years together. If somebody comes outside of your block and help, you don't know that person. They don't have the same agenda as you. And even if the activists are promoting, even if activists are speaking, are trying to bring resources in the community, sometimes for them to have to do that, they have to talk about the deficits in the neighborhood. Oh, we're having mental health issues, or we're having crime issues. When you do that, it makes everybody lethargic. It don't make them feel good about it. But when the community comes together once per month to talk about how we can improve the quality of life on our block, that's infectious. That arouses the enthusiasm in the community, and that carries on. So I would say, if you want your block to be better, don't expect the police to come in and change things. Don't expect the mayor to just throw dollars in your neighborhood. What can you do to organize and stay consistent with following up with people? Because I've seen it happen with Patty on Monticello. I've seen it happen with Tanya Hooks on Kings Drive. I've seen regular, ordinary people organize, and things change faster when you do it that way than expecting things to come in from the outside. So that's off the heart.
Damarion, what are your thoughts? How do you get somebody more engaged and maybe to start their own block club?
You have to be inviting. How can I? So, it's time coming where it's falling into me and my peers' hands that we have to step up and do something. And the individuals that's leaving have to understand that also. You have to pass these things down so youth like us can take over and gain and take these things where you want us to take them. I understand that our generation has been taken over by AI and all of these things, but we still will uphold those values. So let us in those conversations, include us, amplify youth voice so youth can know these are the next steps and these are the things we have to do.
I'm going to throw this question at our sociologist as well. What do we know about, the impact of community engagement and involvement in safety?
Yeah. So most of how we keep our neighborhoods safe is exactly what they just described, right? We have fancy names for it in sociology, informal social control, collective efficacy, but Chicago's a city that works, and we work to keep our neighborhood safe. Most fights don't lead to a shooting, but we don't talk about that. We don't talk about those neighborhood peacekeepers that are making that happen. We don't talk about the teachers or the moms that aren't even part of an organization. And so I think part of what we know that to be true, right? We've known that for over 100 years, sort of as a discipline, but in the city since it started. But those are the sources that then need that sort of investment. Those are the stories that need to be told. It's hard to get any stories out when everybody's, scrolling through everything that's going on every day. But we need to say, the example you gave of the Dunkin' Donuts, we need that to be out there, right? If you want to keep things like segregation alive, make sure you don't go to that neighborhood. Right? There's a new book that's called Don't Go. That rule, don't go there. No, go, right? Communities are the best classroom. One of my favorite classrooms was my parents' diner that I grew up in the north side of Chicago, right? That's where you brought people in to eat, to ask questions. And we do that in every neighborhood in Chicago. I've never been to a neighborhood in Chicago where I've not been able to ask a question. I might get laughed at, but that's what I want, right? I want somebody to laugh at me and then take me and show me and make me a plate and tell me the way it is. Because that's the key to block clubs, that's the key to classrooms. My sister's a principal. That's the way the city works. And we need those stories to get out. And how do you supercharge that? You supercharge it by certain types of investments, by building local workforces, by having housing, and by making sure that people feel safe. And we need to change the narrative in terms of violence. Chicago's known for violence. We should be known for violence prevention and the work that we put into that. That's one more change in addition to everything else that we could be doing.
One other little thing that's a kind of a basics of organizing, you mentioned food. It's like always having food there, right? But when you think about people who maybe work all day long and that aren't necessarily as easily able to attend these things, we used to have childcare. Because a lot of families have young kids and they can't necessarily go to a meeting or they can't go to some activity because they need someone to help watch their kids. So part of the organizing work we used to do is we would have activities for the kids, sort of learning activities, play kinds of things where they could also learn. So that's just another little organizing aspect of it.
All right, thank you for all of you for those excellent answers. So I want to pivot a little bit to youth engagement. We've got a video question from Rashawn Guess.
More resources for the kids. They need activities because the idle mind is a devil workshop. So we need things for these kids to do.
I'm gonna give this question to, I love that it was a simple question. What do we do with the kids? Principal Sharpe, I'm gonna ask you, what kind of thoughts do you have about what activities, what opportunities there are for engaging young people?
Yes, I think that is so pivotal or sort of vital because when we give young people, and I always say I love being a high school principal, but the reality is a lot of these resources need to come into elementary school level. And a lot of times people say, oh, they're too young for that. No, they're not. No, they're not, and I think we can see that because baby can pick up an iPad and honey, they're gone. And so I think that we really need to look at what these resources look like at the elementary school level. The Collins Academy has been blessed that we've been able to come in, we've been able to start some of these programs, and as the mayor has said, we will be getting a STEAM program, so we're being able to put in what I think is the highlight, a medical program, because we are that close to the medical district. But it shouldn't stop at the high school level, because by the time they come to me, they have their minds pretty made up on what it is that they aspire to. But if we can catch young people in elementary school at that third grade, that fourth grade is when the mindset begins to shift from, oh, mom, I love you, to, ooh, who am I hanging with and who do I want to be with? But if we can get young people involved in some of the things that they also like, studio, designing clothes, of course, the carpentry, the chef, those things that are the great things that my block, my hood, my city they're already doing. They're helping the students to get these exploration and these opportunities, put more of that in elementary schools so it grows up in them. I am an avid Olympian watcher, or Olympic watcher. And what you hear these stories is, I have been doing this since I was 3. I've been doing this since I was 5. And if we can give all the young people of the city an opportunity to be doing something at a younger age, and it grows up in them, and they grow up with a skill set that they can then take and use it to parlay them into college or to parlay them into their own entrepreneurial ideals.
Damarion, I'm going to bring you in as well.
I think what it is that we have to be met where we are, you know. It's a lot that youth in the city of Chicago go through and see every day that can be very daunting to them. But like with programs with My Block, My Hood, My City, you ain't got a ride, they coming to get you. You ain't got a ride home, they drop you off. You hungry and we going to the restaurant, you don't have no money, they buying everybody food. So they make spaces where you feel safe socially, where you feel safe emotionally, and where you are able to not have to worry about anything. I think that's a lot with youth engagement, worrying. And economic disadvantages plays a big part in this, because a lot of youth say, I can't do that because I gotta watch my baby sister after this. Or a lot of youth say, I can't play basketball because I gotta work to help mom pay the bills. So just having those things that can take a youth away from so much, and like they're learning, but they're also having fun with it. I know those things is tough to get together, but learning and fun plays a big part in youth engagement.
Thank you. Teresa, Córdova.
Yeah, just very quickly, I want to pick up on something what Ms. Sharpe said. This whole idea of like they're taking their talents and turning those into entrepreneurial possibilities. I mean, this whole the notion of youth taking their assets, their skills, and then turning them into money-making kinds of endeavors, right? And so there's ways to bring people together in these little sort of mini worker cooperatives as youth, designing clothes, designing T-shirts, designing, I mean, all kinds of things, right? If you think about what are the needs that a community might have, and what some of the needs that the youth themselves can produce to meet those community needs, can lead in opportunities. But I also think Ms. Sharpe should tell you about the algebra class that she teaches too.
Oh boy.
Because that's very foundational, right?
Right. That's going to be the next one, the next state of our city, the State of Collins Academy. Joanna, we've got one more audience question on this subject. Joanna, who do we have?
She's been waiting patiently. Thank you. We have here Jahmal from South Shore, correct? What would you like to ask?
As the founder and CEO of Ladies of Virtue, I see firsthand the resilience and potential of our Black girls. What concrete steps is your administration taking to partner with community organizations and schools to create sustainable support systems that nurture their academic, personal, and leadership growth?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I presume you're talking about the Johnson administration and not the Collins Academy, Ms. Sharpe's administration. First of all, let me just congratulate you and thank you for investing in our young Black girls. Raising a daughter, it's the real joy of my life. Honestly, my sons, they'll figure it out at some point. My daughter has already figured it out. And one of the things that she has figured out, she has this real keen sense of awareness of who she is in relationship to other people. And as Ms. Sharpe was describing, it's like you were describing my daughter, this I love you, Mom, I love you, Dad, to how do I fit within society and do the things that matter to me, my gifts and skills, do they matter? And so through our Department of Family Support Services, we are creating opportunities for organizations like yours to provide additional support to these young girls. You know, what's really disturbing though is that the insecurity that sets in Black girls in particular early in life is quite upsetting. The number of educators who do not have the cultural competency to understand mood and attitude doesn't have to be defiant. And that's, trust me, look, my daughter and I, we had this back and forth once, right before the pandemic ended. She was coming out of first grade. First of all, I was having a back and forth with a little girl, so I've already failed as a Black dad. I don't know any Black father who's had to go back and forth with their daughter, especially at that age. And the conversation ended because she said, Daddy, you are triggering me. Exactly. Try that for a sociologist and see, you know, but what I was impressed by was her understanding that me as authority, she felt comfortable enough in that conversation to say, this doesn't feel right. And so organizations like yours who provide that level of confidence and support and normalcy, we're going to continue to fund those programs. And so with what the question that was asked earlier, how do we respond to the needs of young people? That's why we added more dollars in this year's budget. And I had to fight for it to hire 29,000 young people for summer jobs. So you might have young ladies who have come through your program who could come back with the city's support to provide mentorship at least for 6 to 8 weeks. These are the type of opportunities that we want to continue to create for young people in the city. And Mayor Johnson loved the kids, so just keep that in mind.
LaKenya Sharpe, I want to get you on this question as well. Obviously, you are educating young black girls. What do you think? What kind of support could they use? Could they benefit from the city?
Yes, first of all, I want to say thank you for doing that work. That is awesome, and it's so much needed. I think one thing that all schools could do, but something that we're definitely doing at the Collins Academy, is having opportunities for young people to come in and say when they need help. I don't expect every day to be this rosy morning that you came out of. Something may be going on. So our students, I like to call my babies, understand that when it is a little daunting, when it is a little bit hard and you're not seeing that rainbow, you can come in and ask for help. You can ask for a counselor. You can ask for a social worker. We also have mentoring programs after school that are dedicated to young ladies or during our lunchtime, because again, our students are eating for lunch, but after that it just becomes just eating. But we wanted to provide an opportunity where you are learning to express yourselves. We have etiquette classes. We're going to do a little cotillion. It's important for them to feel special, and programs like the one that she is leading allows our young black girls to understand that they are special in a world that sometimes has them thinking that the very element of who they are is to be dismissed. Being able to have spaces in the building during lunch, after school, before school, that they can come and they can talk to someone allows them to feel better and feel like they can also make it.
All right, thank you for those answers and for the question. So a couple of general questions that some Chicagoans would like answered. Here's a video question from Patricia Lott.
All these potholes is like really messing my tires up. So if they don't fix these streets, they need to fix my car. That's about it.
Mayor, you either have to repair the car or the potholes. Your choice. Mayor's choice.
So go to my block, my hood, my city. Look, I will just acknowledge that the resources that we have in Chicago for streets and sanitation, these resources were challenged by this last budget. There was a 3% cut. This is something that, all of our departments had to do. City council members fought me as I fought for more revenue and other ideas to generate revenue. And the short answer is, I'm going to need all of us in this room to challenge city council members, challenge me, challenge the state of Illinois, the federal government, to generate more revenue so that these vital city services can be properly supported. Jahmal mentioned volunteerism, and that's great. Community organizing, that's great. There are things that we can do within our communities. And there is a responsibility that government has to ensure that the residents are taken care of. It's something that I'm very much concerned about, and I'm going to need everybody in this room to help us fight for more progressive revenue.
All right, thank you. So before we run out of time, this last question was submitted via social media, Instagram specifically, and I want to give it to all of you, so keep that in mind as you're answering. Thank you. It comes from Alebrije Agency, and the question is, how can we help you? If you had to ask a favor from the people of Chicago, what would it be? Jahmal Cole, I'm going to start with you, please.
Yeah, I would ask, I would challenge Ali Hebre with a question as well and say, what's something simple you can do that'll have a positive effect in your block? Like, what's something simple you can do that'll have a positive impact in your block? Can you shovel snow for a neighbor? Can you put a positive note on that bulletproof glass window? Can you say hello to somebody? What's something simple you can do to create a ripple of hope on your block? Because if you create a ripple of hope on your block, she creates a ripple of hope on her block, that's a whole wave of change in Chicago. So I put the question back on you. How you can help me is, what's something simple you can do on your block that'll make a difference?
Few seconds, Andrew Papachristos.
Again, I'm going to kind of build off of this. I would figure out what it is that you do and you're interested in and find another place in Chicago to connect with, right? Get past your own neighborhood, go explore the city, engage in something you're curious in.
Thank you. Teresa.
Sort of same lines. Be civically involved, be civically engaged, and be informed as best you can.
Mine is simple. Show up. Show up, show your support, and give your support.
Principal
Believe. Believe in my babies. Believe in the city. Believe. And once we believe and we get to action, then there's no stopping us.
All right. Mayor, 20 seconds.
Organize, organize, organize. The best way to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago and a more inclusive economy is if we all come together. So commit to organizing.
Nice work, everybody. Thank you all. I want to thank our panelists and our live audience. So that is our show for this Monday night. Thank you again to Jahmal Cole and everyone at My Block, My Hood, My City for their partnership in tonight's program. Also, be sure to sign up for our free email newsletter, The Daily Chicagoan, at WTTW.com/newsletter. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and a special time, that'll be 10:30. Now, for all of us here at WTTW News, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to be a multilingual law firm that provides translators for a variety of languages.